so this episode, we're going to go through any follow-ups from the book cycle and any fans that contacted us, commented on anything during that book cycle, but it might not necessarily be about the book. All right.
Can we introduce our special guest for this episode?
Oh, yeah.
I totally forgot.
We haven't introduced her.
Where's our manners?
I know.
Well, she's old news.
We
She's
just
already
wanted to
been
jump
on.
into bashing.
I'm gonna take that as a compliment.
Virginia
I'm
is
just, like,
part of the crew.
family
Yeah.
here.
Sorry, I
Welcome,
didn't mean to
Virginia.
take over. Yeah, welcome. And I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to take over. But she talked, and I was like, nobody's going to know who that. Well, maybe. They'll probably recognize your voice.
Maybe she's the most popular voice. Our fans can email us at any time and tell us what they like, what they don't like, right?
Or if they want their voice on.
What's the address, Sarah?
Oh, it's connect@bookinterrupted.com or
Sarah was inside herself again. They're talking to me.
That came out wrong.
It never comes out right.
Oh.
Figuratively, not literally.
Oh no.
Oh,
Sarah,
no.
hands on the screen. We need to see your hands. I don't want you fidgeting around down there anymore.
And that's the worst person to say that to. Sarah's going to be so
I know,
embarrassed for
I'm
the
very
next
glad
minute.
I'm
She's going to be inside herself for way longer now.
Oh my
guys. Yeah.
Don't
Never
look
going
at
to come
me.
back out.
fans, yeah, they can
Email
connect
us.
with us. Yeah, email us at connect@bookinterrupted.com.
And it would be
And
also cool because a fan could email us a voice memo, and then maybe you could hear your voice on the podcast too, just like Virginia.
Ooh.
You could be the
Oh,
mystery
and we have
voice
them.
that we don't introduce.
they can also leave a voicemail on our phone number. We have a phone number, and our phone number is 416-900. I have to look it up.
Something else.
because I never
And it's
call
also
it.
on the website.
You don't call us?
And just guess.
001-416-900-8603. And you can leave a voice message too. And I can use that voice message and put it on the show.
We would love to hear from
That's
you.
fun.
Anything. What do
I
you
now
like? What
want
do you
to
hate?
really do a crank call.
Do a
To
crank
that
call.
number.
Crank us.
I like that. Do it.
I will.
know your
Voice
voice
now.
You kind of need someone to answer. You know what I mean? To participate in the crank. Otherwise,
Okay, I'll
you're
do.
like,
I'll do a
is your
crank
fridge running?
voicemail. I was
Call
just
me
thinking of the "Is your fridge running?" one.
Call me back.
But when they call, they know an
Call me
answer,
back.
right?
It's her
Nobody
phrase.
Nobody
does
answers.
answer.
Nobody answers. It's a voicemail.
So it has to be a one-sided crank
Perfect.
if there's going to be a crank
Mhm.
call.
Or
If
two
you wanna
people.
crank us.
Just have two people on the line.
What, doing a
each
skit of
other.
a crank call?
Yeah.
A three-way
like the jerky
call us.
voice.
Leave us
It's
a
like the
message.
jerky voice.
It's very complicated now. We're trying to encourage people.
All this stuff is ruined for kids these days, right? And the ding dong ditches. It's all
know.
ruined now for kids,
Yeah.
like with the Ring doorbells and stuff.
Right?
Yeah, I know.
Book interrupted.
My interruption is me realizing that the uploads that I did for my Personal Journal 1, Personal Journal 2, and Final Book Report had not indeed uploaded to the Google Shared Drive like I had thought. So I am now trying to do it again, except that guess what? I'm being interrupted by the insane number of videos and pictures that are on my cell phone from my children and my gorgeous little niece. They were busy. We're talking what seems like thousands of photos. I'm just scrolling through, trying to find those original videos for Book Interrupted.
Book interrupted.
So does anyone else have follow-up, or I can go into a fan thing?
Follow up about burnout?
Yeah,
Yeah. Do
I
we have
mean-
any challenges or anything? I don't think so.
we did not. But I
Just
thought it was
finishing
kind
the
of like
book.
all their like what are they called? Like worksheets. They're kind of personal. Like the works, they would be a little bit too much to be like, going into
Mhm.
detail.
There was
about
no
your
way I was going to do those
psychosis.
worksheets.
I
Yeah,
wasn't going to do worksheets. This wasn't going to happen.
yeah, like
I don't
oh,
think
my
we
job.
had to. They're just kind of like nice to have as resources.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 I don't know if you're burnt out. Like, do you have time to do those. I don't know.
Right.
Or
I say,
motivation.
like, no way am I putting that on. I'll put it at the bottom of my list and never do it.
Well, if you're burnt out and you purchase a book on burnout, arguably then you may be seeking to do some things to ease your burnout.
To remedy it.
Yeah. So
I would
they're in the
I
right
would say
place
yes.
in the right book. Yeah.
because I remember I was burnt out and I kind of hit rock bottom. Well, I had a miscarriage, so I really hit rock bottom. And Kim actually sent me Tony Robbins' book, The Giant. What is it called again?
Awaken the Giant Within.
Oh, Awaken.
Not to be
Awaken the
dramatic.
Awaken the Giant Within. And I did he had worksheets and stuff, and I did them all because I was seriously rock bottom. Like, I couldn't stop crying.
Well,
So I did
that's a
that
good
and it
point
helped.
then. Like a personality type. You know what I mean? Like Sarah was like a sponge for worksheets, even though she was out of all other fucks for everything else. So it just depends.
So I did all of them. I was like crying in the paper.
Did they help you?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
It's really good. Like I still recommend that to people, although like in it, I tried to read it fairly recently to some people, and there's so many dated references. Like he might reference OJ Simpson. Like he might be like, OJ Simpson,
Oh
he
my
never gave
God.
up. Like it's like so you're like, wow.
Yeah, it's not a great thing. Yeah.
And
Not
maybe
always
the
great.
World Trade Centers. Like I feel like I don't know how he could reference them in a way that, I mean, I guess just that they exist, but anyway,
They'll
so
always
like
be there. Like people like
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
you
yeah,
look
they'll
back
never
and people are
fall.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
so it's dated in that way, but like the things that he's saying and the stuff that he's like talking about and like the way that he kind of raises your awareness around those things are still totally relevant today.
And I like needed to like reassess my life. Do you know what I mean? I was so busy and so burnt out. Then when it happened, it like stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, now what? Like, I just want to scrap it all. I don't want to.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's what I think one of the components of burnout is that so often, and I mean, everyone has different experience with it, but if I'm speaking in generalities, part of the contributing factor with burnout is like you think you're clear on what's happening and what's weighing you down, but doing exercises where you can increase self-awareness gets you very clear. And sometimes getting a healthy dosage of clarity is the first step.
I would build on that and say also sometimes, again, in generalities, there may be an element of denial associated with burnout, because you would think if one was aware of the inevitable outcome of whatever habits and things that you're doing, you would avoid it sooner before becoming burnt out. So there's like a lack of awareness.
Yeah.
I think like that contributes to it.
Actually, so many things, not just burnout, but so many of
Any problem. That's
what
right.
we struggle
Totally.
with. It's about what do you need to do to increase the likelihood of more consciousness or self-awareness in this area? How
it's
can
directly-
you start to get drilled down into, you're not just looking at your output, your behaviors. What's the pathway in that allows you some insight into what are the beliefs that are driving me? Like if I already knew this was going to lead to burnout, then why the fudge did I keep doing it?
That's like one of the main takeaways from that book with Tony Robbins is examining your beliefs. Like, where did they come from? Did you inherit those from your parents and they're not even yours? Like, because if you don't look at them and get really clear, you don't even know, and you just operate on autopilot.
Yeah.
So yeah, like clarity, like self-awareness and insight is like directly proportional to like satisfaction and
Fulfillment in life. Yeah.
But you would need that time to stop and reflect.
you have to make it.
Well,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but if you're going through burnout, it means you're like ping-ponging through your life almost, right? So you have to take that time to take that pause
why do you
and
think
self-examine.
your body
Yeah.
and mind are screaming
It
so
forces you
loud
to.
in the form
Yeah.
of burnout?
Yeah.
I wonder if it is to elicit the self-reflection.
Totally.
Right.
Well, that's what
Yeah.
happened to me.
The
A later
miscarriage.
miscarriage. And then it was like I was forced to stop because I like.
It was like a
couldn't-
punch in the face.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was physically unable to go to work and emotionally unable to function in the world anymore. Like but it forced me to be like, okay, why
What
did
am I
I just
doing?
keep my head? Yeah, what am I doing? Just
Mhm.
kept my head down and kept on going. And then it forced me. But then I didn't go back to work for, I think, 4 weeks or something. because like a social worker was like, you're not able to go back to work. I was like, oh.
Which is
Okay.
great too.
So
Someone
you're
else who
gonna
understands
see
and can
me.
sign off and give you the time that Virginia's talking about, right? Like,
Yeah, they signed
needs
off and were like,
time.
you're gonna come see me twice a week, and physically you're gonna get better, and we're gonna talk why this is happening. Yeah.
Sarah, what was that process like for you, getting a social worker to sign off? And I ask because in my own like occupation, a lot of clients now are coming and there's a lot of apprehension on their part they have the doctor's note that says like, no, you're going on short-term or long-term leave. But for many of my clients, there's this apprehension place where they don't want to submit it to their HR. And I'm noticing interpreting it as shame. And that's what we're looking at. And I know with my own experience, when I got the stress leave note, like I knew, like I needed it. Like you said, like you're unable to function. But also with myself, it took a while to be able to submit it. What was it like for you, and what pushed you to finally say, yeah, I'm waving the white flag, I will submit my note?
Well, mine might be a bit different. So because I had a miscarriage, I had to call and say, I'm not coming to work today. I have to go to the hospital because the baby didn't miscarry right away. So I had to go to a maternity hospital. And then, I'm getting emotional a little bit. But then after the baby left, I called HR to say I had a miscarriage. And so I didn't have to worry for a bit because something physically happened to me. But because I had it in the maternity hospital, they had me automatically go see a social worker in that hospital. You're required to. So they had set me up with an appointment to go see them the following day or 2 days later or something like that. So I did. And then I went to I had my full breakdown. But because I already had a case for having a miscarriage, then I didn't tell my HR that I wasn't going back because of these reasons. They got me in contact with my benefits company for short-term disability. And I talked to that lady and I told her that woman why they had me go to the social worker and she doesn't think I should go back. And I was also crying a lot. So I was crying on the phone to this woman too. And she's like, of course, you can. How long does she think you need? And I said, I don't know. She hasn't said. And she's like, the most you can take is, I think it was 4 weeks or 5 weeks, whatever it was. And she's like, 5 weeks, that's it. You have the whole 5 weeks, even if you don't need it. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. It was a really lovely woman that was helping me. But my HR department and my work didn't know I was like emotionally having a hard time and breakdown. They only knew I needed that much time because I had a miscarriage. So
and you don't even have to tell them
or mental.
Yeah,
no,
that's the
I
thing.
didn't have to tell them nothing. So maybe some of your clients, they don't necessarily need to tell their HR department. They could say my physician said I need to
recommends
because I have to go through treatment. You don't have to say what it is.
And that's what I'm
your HR
researching,
department's
right? Is how much does the employer need to receive?
They don't get to, they don't like, I
information.
mean, in BC, nobody has to tell us anything. Like they don't have to disclose anything. They just take a sick day or they like whatever, right? It's only if you have a good relationship where you may want to and like whatever, but there's no obligation. And I just want to speak to that point too. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we are part of like individualistic society as opposed to collective. So everything that is encouraged here and rewarded and prized is competitive usually. It's about rising to the top. And so when you wonder why people don't want to, submit their permission slips to not show up, it's because in every other fiber of our society, you're not allowed to not show up.
No, that's
because then you're a failure. Right. And so
Yeah.
it could be shame for sure, because all that's ever been indoctrined into everyone is that you like, that's why there is so much burnout, because people are not listening to themselves, going after the golden goose or whatever, so.
And it can be legitimately career limiting is the thing. Is like, I mean, we can all say that like people should have mental health days and stuff like that, but like there's still, you know, old attitudes being like, well, that person had stress, they can't handle more than their job. That's people would just assume that, and then it could be career limiting for you. And I think a lot of people are scared that if they take the time for themselves now, it means basically their career's over.
It could be career limiting for you too, to not take the time.
No, for sure,
Right?
sure. But I'm just saying that like the perception of your value as an employee can change completely.
And I was going to say the same thing. I think it screams stigma, and it screams self-stigma as well, that people aren't taking that time to, you know, take that slip to their HR and say they need the time off.
It's been internalized that it's not okay.
All the stigma. Yeah.
And
it
also,
breaks my heart. The self-stigma really breaks my heart.
It's more socially acceptable to be physically unable to work because you can recover in people's opinions. I recovered from my emotional breakdown. I had a miscarriage, but Meredith's right. I think there's a stigma associated with it. I never told anybody it was because I emotionally couldn't handle going back to my life. They just thought I had a bad miscarriage and I was physically ill.
Yeah, like bed rest for however long.
And I let them think that when I came back. I never elaborated.
Yeah.
I made it very clear that I wasn't wanting to elaborate, and people just avoided asking me.
Sarah, I'm so sorry that you went through that. And I'm really grateful that you spoke about it in this forum. Like, thank you for that.
Oh, thanks.
Well, because that is something we always say, right? Like, people need to talk about this more. Now we need someone like with menopause to come on and tell us about that. Right? Miscarriages, menopause, like all these things that no one knows about until unfortunately someone goes through it, or inevitably everyone goes through it if you're a woman, right? So like
But people don't come forward, to your point, though, until you go through it and until you're open about it. So that's why I love that you are being so open about it, Sarah, is that, you know, people, it could encourage other people to talk about it more, because they don't. And then you don't realize how frequently it occurs, like with a miscarriage, or, you know, some of the challenges that come with menopause. And so I think it's incumbent on women to share more about this, and then also not to judge either, right? Other women for, you know, or sort of blame, like I had a miscarriage as well. And it was, and there was a lot of blame that like blame it on what I was doing wrong, you know, like that caused it. It was like unbelievable, some of the things that came out from it. So I think that people just in general need to come together a little bit more.
For sure.
Yeah. Like, and you have to be really brave to talk about it because it's such a vulnerable topic. But like what you're also doing is now making someone else out there like feel less alone, right? And I think that that's probably a huge piece of the like vulnerability or shame pie, is you think it's only you, or you think it's your fault, or you like all of these things, right? And
I want to share something that social worker told me, because you had people come up to you and blame you for what you were doing. So I blamed myself a lot because I was working way too much, and I worked a trade show really late, and that next day I had the miscarriage. So I felt it was my fault that I did this. I lost my baby. Anyway, the social worker tried to make it very clear to me that that is not why I lost my baby. Because she's like, I'm going to make it as clear as possible, because I wasn't listening, because, you know, I go into myself.
Sure, you were inside yourself.
Yeah, I was inside myself.
Figuratively.
Again.
Figuratively.
Figuratively, not actually it with the social worker there.
There was a whole other conversation they had. And now that we're going to talk about this,
we can
you have to talk about other things.
That coping strategy. If it were literally.
You can't go back to work if you're going to use that as your coping strategy. You need time off.
How about 5 weeks?
Is that enough time?
Is that enough?
So she was saying there are women that come to the maternity hospital that are addicts, and they don't eat any food, because I'm like, I'm a nutritionist, I know everything you're supposed to do when you're pregnant. And she said they don't eat the proper amount of food, they barely eat at all, They don't get any of their multivitamins. They don't rest. They're up for sometimes 48 hours at a time, and they're shooting up stuff and all this stuff. And they give birth to a baby. Your baby was not viable. There's nothing you did that would make you have the miscarriage. Your baby wasn't viable, and that's what happens because it's nothing you did.
Your body knows.
Your body knows it wasn't viable pregnancy, and then that's why you had a miscarriage. So all these people that point fingers at women when they have their miscarriages, that they did something wrong, it is not your fault. Your baby wasn't viable. That's it. It just wasn't meant to be born.
And that's wonderful that you got a social worker. Like, I feel like that should be more in place for women so that they have someone to talk to, so that they have, you know, the knowledge and the reminders, you know, if they start doubting themselves, if they start believing what people are telling them about, you know, that this miscarriage happened because of something you did or didn't do, or, you know, I think it's wonderful that hospital had a social worker for you, and I would love to see more of that in the future.
Yeah, it's because it was a specialty hospital and my midwife told me to go there. But I think every hospital should have that. They really should.
Yeah, because like a lot of people, it's not like having a child is a specialty thing that happens very rarely to very few people. You know, I'm just saying that, like, you know, a lot of people need that kind of care. Right? It's unfortunate that it's just,
we're not just
talking
about one person out of billions. Yeah.
It should be a conversation that happens a lot.
Yes, and so many people came to me after I had my miscarriage. When I told them I had a miscarriage, so many people I knew told me they did too, and I had no idea because no one talks about it.
Right.
So many women. It's more common than you realize.
I mean, and you talk about like the taking stress leave, like the stigma there, but like there's also, I think a lot of people, there's a certain stigma about even trying to get pregnant when you're working, that you don't want your employer knowing that you're even planning on having children. They don't want you to go on mat leave, and they don't want to know about it really. And so you could be trying and having miscarriages, and you're not going to tell anybody because you're like, well, then they'll know that I'm trying to have a kid, and I'll be treated differently.
And they may not consider me for a promotion or that other position that I really wanted.
Totally. So I think that some of the silence comes from that.
As well as like the failing, right? Because again, if the competition and the success is so prioritized in this society, and having it framed like just how these guys are already feeling like it's their fault, right? So I'm not succeeding. I'm trying to do something and I'm not able to do it. I'm like not succeeding at this, and that is not okay, because only success is prized here.
If you've enjoyed these video highlights, listen to the full episode on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new episodes are published. Find out more by going to www.bookinterrupted.com.
Never forget, every child matters.